Chloe is a mother in civil resistance to try and save her children from the climate crisis. You need to listen to what this lady's got to say. She's a wonderful person. Hello, welcome, Chloe.
Thanks for having me, Josh.
Yeah, no, thanks for coming on. Yeah. Do you want to maybe start by telling people a bit about yourself and what involvement you've had so far in, Just Stop Oil?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Chloe. I'm a mum. I live in Bristol. I have a cat. I have a professional theatre producing career. So I've been a theatre producer for over 20 years. And I got involved with Just Stop Oil in the summer of last year, sort of around about a year ago actually, in preparation for the mass injunction break at Kingsbury Oil Terminals in early September last year. And I hadn't been involved in anything to do with Just Stop Oil up until that point. I'd been largely involved with Extinction Rebellion through our Bristol Families group largely, and our local Bristol group. I've been involved in Culture Declares Emergency. I've been involved in sort of holding a Southwest network for that. So, you know, my activism had been connected to my, persona as a parent, connected to my job, and also just I'd been involved with several Extinction Rebellion actions at that point. So I'd been arrested 4 times, done various other actions that hadn't resulted in arrest.
Okay.
And I think I'd felt for a while that at some point I was going to end up confronting the reality of prison.
Yeah.
There was a point when the public order bill, or the police crime courts of sentencing bill, came in, where I said to my ex-husband, who's the father of my kids, I think I'm going to have to sort of dial back what I'm planning to do because everything's going to come with the threat of prison.
Yeah.
And he said, well, look, it's a war, isn't it? It's a war, and
Yeah.
you haven't got to go and fight in the trenches and be away for months and years and maybe not come home at all. You might just have to go to prison for a few weeks at some point. And him having that perspective was quite surprising and quite amazing to me, really, because he'd been really supportive, but I wasn't expecting him to understand it to that extent. And so when the sort of option of getting involved in an action that was going to involve a likely short-term prison spell came up, I sort of thought, I think this is probably something I should do. I felt compelled to do it.
Well, bravo to you,
as we do.
Yeah. Can I ask, so about your motivations, like for people who don't have any context of what we're talking about, in your own words, as being a parent, affect coming to your judgment of why you've chose to do what you've done?
Yeah, I mean, it's front and centre, really. I've always had a very strong sense of justice and injustice. And, of course, the climate crisis, the climate emergency is just the most enormous injustice. So there is a little bit of me that I think, whether I was a parent or not, would be outraged by what's happening and the fundamental unfairness of it. But the bit of my life that is activism rather than just passive concern was kicked off as a result of concern for my children, really. I don't tell the full version of this story very often, although I tell a version of it. You can tell.
I think it's a good thing about a podcast. You've not got 60 seconds to say everything you want to say. The point is, it's long form. You can take as much time as you need.
Yeah. Funny enough, it's not about the time it takes. It's about the extent of it. So there's a version of the story that I'd tell where I was standing in the shower on a really bright sunny February morning, and for reasons that I don't fully understand, I started to. It was like all at once, the impact of all of the articles that I'd half read and all the headlines and all the sort of stuff that I was aware of, but I'd been kind of like deliberately not looking at it. It all hit me. And I stood in this shower and I wondered whether I would ever have to author my children's exit from the world in the way that I consciously and lovingly authored their entry into it.
Mm-hmm.
And the bit I don't normally tell is, which I will tell to you, Josh, because I know that you will have an emotional connection to the story at this level.
Yeah.
Of your own. I found myself wondering if I would have the strength to bury my children. And like, if I can't feed them and if I can't keep them safe, and the reality is, you know, they will actually be big and responsible for themselves by the time this stuff happens here.
Yeah, but there'll be a lot of other children and people, you know, all over the world, you know.
There are parents who are making this kind of choice, a version of this kind of choice all the time. It's what is the future ahead of them, and is it worth living? And is it, you know, I think of it as my downfall moment. So if you've ever watched Downfall, there's a moment in the bunker where I can't remember which of the Nazis and his wife is, they crush cyanide capsules in their children's mouths because the thought of losing the war and being, you know, tried for their crimes or whatever was so horrendous to them. It was better to do that. And you know, and I have to say, I'm absolutely not going to do that. That's not, you know,
Yeah.
I'm not. I told a version of this story and got reported to the NSPCC, and you know, it is shocking to hear someone say it. It's shocking to think it.
Can I just add,
I'm obviously not going to do it.
I also want to add to it. So I do understand where you're coming from, because when you get into a situation when there's no food anymore, people are starving, people are murdering each other. You know, there's people being, like, you know, probably murdered, raped, looting, all kinds of shit going down, and you're in there with children, and your children are starving. Like, I don't know. I would never give up. Like, personally, like, if after, because when there's no food, really, the small, it's the old and the young that you know can't survive in that. So you're probably looking at your children dying before you from no food, and you just happen to survive because you're bigger.
Yeah.
And
I mean, it's just a horrendous conversation, isn't it? It's utterly horrendous, and it was utterly horrendous to sort of stand there with very little understanding as to why I suddenly was thinking these things. Just suddenly, all at once, absorbing the awfulness of it, you know, and I think that was the moment where my sort of, I didn't yet know where to find the people that I needed to find, and I have subsequently found them, and thank God for the amazing people that are part of, you know, these environmental movements that we know and love. But it took me a while to work out what to do with that. But I was in a sort of state of trauma about it for about 6 months because I just did not know what to do. I was refilling my shampoo bottles. I was making eco bricks with my plastic. I was, you know, shopping as responsibly as I could, you know.
Can I ask, what do you think that is? Because there's a certain, like, moment for you, isn't there, right, where you just all of a sudden, boom, it hits you. And I've heard that time and time again. There's a certain moment where it hits you, and what do you think that is? And do you think there could be a moment where quite a large number of people click and get it?
I really hope so. I mean, I don't wish how that felt on anybody, but
I think they need to feel it. I think they need to feel it. They need to feel it.
I think they do. It's emotional connection. It's going, I've suddenly thought about what this means for me and for the people that I love.
Yeah.
And up until that point, it had been awful stuff, but it was happening to people somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. That's the difference.
And that's the thing. I suddenly went, oh my God. And I know I'm not particularly proud of the fact that my activism comes from that sort of selfish engagement, but thank God it comes from somewhere. But, you know, that it was that moment of switching my heart on as well as my head and going, this is what it means for me.
You know, this is really important because there could be lots of mothers hearing your voice who are feeling the same level of, like, dread, or maybe they're not feeling it, but maybe they are, and they're too, you know, they're not really sure what will happen if they become an activist. It's not an easy step, is it, really, to step out and, you know, in front of everybody, all your friends and all your family, and risk so much. It's quite a big one. Like, that's why I respect everybody that does it, because I know how much of a hard decision it is to actually take.
Yeah, but I think the first step is hard, And then I think it gets progressively less hard. I mean, I think it's that moment of going, I'm going to do something that not everybody would do, and people are going to look at me differently for doing it. And there are things that I'm going to do, and there are things that I'm going to say that I can never undo, that I can never unattach from myself and who I am. And the first time you do it, that's a big step outside your comfort zone, and it's a big step away from the sort of nice conventional person that you were. But every step after that is a little bit easier.
I want to add something to that about every step being easier. April 2022, you know, the oil silo actions when Justifier were closing down oil terminals. I was in a car like 3 a.m. being driven to an oil terminal. But before this, I'd done like Insulate Britain. I'd invaded a football pitch in front of 68,000 people. Done crazy shit. And I remember just sitting in this car like completely calm and like relaxed because it's just fine. And I remember the contrast because there was people in that car who it was their first action. And you could, you know, I could feel the contrast between like where I was at and where they were at. But it does get easier. You just get a lot easier, especially if you do crazy shit like.
Yeah. But I think that sense of calm is an amazing feeling. I've had that on my way to actions as well. You know, I felt more anxious about my first arrest than I did about. I felt less anxious about my first arrest than I did about doing a 2-minute pre-record on local radio about something to do with my job. I felt so. Well, it's just this intense feeling of being in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing, and it's that. And I think this astonishing feeling of putting your body where your heart is, and it's a beautiful, powerful. It's like being at the centre of the storm. It's just
really
like,
is, isn't it?
And you go, I am doing the right thing. I'm acting out of my principles and my conviction, and I've found there's a courage in me that I did not know I had.
It's something else.
And it comes from, it's amazing. And it was part of, because we were in a group of people taking action together. So it was partly that sort of feeling of being in a group. But it was just that very intense personal experience of going, I know what I'm doing and I know why I'm doing it. And I know I'm doing absolutely the most important thing I could be doing today.
You can you're preaching to the choir right now. That was a bit clear. Like you're not talking to some right-wing news presenter. You're actually preaching to the choir.
Well, I know you know it. You know that feeling.
I do know that feeling. Yeah, I do know that feeling. There's nothing else like it, to be honest. Like, do you know one thing actually? So I've seen you on a lot of news. You've been doing very well in the sports, haven't you? So can I ask, what was that experience like, going from the actions to obviously the high stressing, high scrutinised environment of the recording studio?
Yeah. So again, that's this sort of incremental pushing of your comfort zone. You know, the first Spokes gig I ever did was at 5 minutes on the radio on LBC, and it was terrifying. And I gradually suddenly I was doing something on Zoom, then I was in a studio, then now I can do these spokes calls, and I did a piece on the radio recently, and I got to the end of it having felt I'd done really, really well, having felt felt I'd given a good account of myself and the group and what's happening, and I got to the end of it and thought I just realised I didn't even feel nervous with that one. I didn't, I'd lost that sort of
perfect.
Yeah, which is great, and I don't always feel that way about it. Some are more stressful than others, but it's a different kind of pressure. And I think for me, having done having had the experience of going to prison last year and all the sort of stress that put on my family, who were all brilliant about it and great, but I can't keep doing that to them. So for me, joining the Spokes team and getting involved with that side of things has been a way of making what I hope is a really positive contribution to the movement, to doing something that not everybody is comfortable doing, and yet also not compromising my home and professional life.
I think you've been doing it well.
It's tricky.
So I think you've been doing it well, and I think it's important for you to be doing it. I think it's important to have somebody who's been to prison for it, like somebody who's like, well, what have you done? Well, I've actually been to prison for it, thank you. Like, you know, that's somebody you can talk the talk because you've already walked the walk, if you know what I mean.
I think that was the part of why I knew that going to prison was going to be an important thing to do. It's because it gave me that platform. It's given me a platform from which to go, I'm not messing around when I tell you how I feel about this. You know, I'm absolutely prepared to put myself on the line.
Imagine, what would you have done if when you came out of prison, you had a bail condition that said you're not allowed to talk about protesting to any person or any organisation? What would you have done?
Well, that would be the worst possible thing for me to suffer.
Well, that's what
you're going through.
Not anymore.
Those are your conditions.
Not anymore. For the first 4 months of when I came out of prison.
I mean, that's the cruelest possible thing, isn't it? To take away someone's voice, to take away someone's right to speak.
I know.
To take away your ability to tell your truth. I mean, what an absolutely indefensible thing to do to somebody.
For 4 months it was in place.
I'd rather be forced to not leave my home than
I felt horrendous. I wanted to go back to prison. Like, when I was in prison, I was writing speeches and statements and things and putting things out.
I heard some of them, and it was so powerful. The things you were saying were amazing.
Well, I don't know. I got banned from talking about protesting when I came out. So, but good news though, their repression of saying I can't talk about protest, and the day I got that back, this podcast was born. Like, they could absolutely go and suck one now, because now not I'm only going to talk about protesting, I'm going to share it with everybody and get everybody talking about protesting. So they've shot, in my opinion, they've shot themselves in the foot with that one. Like, I mean, that's just the most brilliant response, isn't it? To go, okay, fine, fuck you. Well, like I said, I had my bail hearing on Tuesday, and they've refusing to take my tag off me. So my court cases is like 2 court cases are like 12 months from now. So I'm going to be on this beautiful ankle tag that tracks my location for until then. I can stay out all night, but I can't go south of Manchester. I've got Greater Manchester, South Yorkshire, and Lancashire. And if I go outside of there, I'm in breach and I go to prison.
I just can't believe what's happening in this country. I cannot believe what is happening to, brave and principled ordinary people like you, like Morgan and Marcus, whose appeal has just been turned down this week. There's absolutely no justification with a government that is continuing to license, that has now confirmed that it's licensing those 100 fossil fuel projects. I mean, I've really struggled this week. I've really, really struggled. I'm normally very vocal. I normally post a lot of stuff on social media, and I've got a WhatsApp group that I set up before I went to prison last year that I share articles and media clips with and all sorts. And I've run out of words this week. I just don't know what to say. It's absolutely inconceivable to me that the government would be pursuing this course of action when the evidence of a fossil fuel-induced climate emergency is unfolding all around us, as people are picking their children up off burning beaches in the southern Mediterranean, as people in New York were trapped inside their homes because wildfires from Canada were making the air toxic.
It's unbelievable.
As people are trapped under heat domes across three continents. You just go, what planet? What are they on? I cannot find the words big enough.
I think our response as a species needs to be. Do you know the response? What I did with the podcast, the more pressure, it's like springing up somewhere else. We need to combat that insane amount of stupidity and evil with the most amount of brilliance and love. Like, let's get the kindest, bravest, most selfless people together, and we have, God, we're talking about almost every government in the world. You know.
Yeah.
So the one thing when people say to me that it's impossible for us to take over because the 1% rule everything, I say, well, okay, well, what about the 99%? You know, because if they're the 1%, we're the 99%. If the 99% can't stop the 1% destroying the world, you know, it's not even like the 99%. It's like the 99.9999%. You know.
But then I go back to that you know, the question we were asking right at the beginning, you know, why, you know, I feel like I had a very rational reaction to what's happening as a parent. Why is everyone not having that reaction?
Oh, that is a very good question.
You know, why will we not do this for our children if not for ourselves? Why are we so self-interested that we would rather go, just don't really want to inconvenience myself, and maybe I've got 10 more years of living this quite comfortable life that I quite like before, you know, shit hits the fan. And just why will we not act in best interests of our youngest and most vulnerable people?
I guess people think that somebody else is going to come and fix it. You know, like, I've even heard that from people, like I've heard that from people where they say, I tell them about that Just Oil and the protest and the climate crisis, and they say, well, don't worry, I trust you, you've got this. And I'm like, no, actually, I don't. We don't. We really, really don't. We kind of need your help, and they just kind of shrug it off.
I think for some people, the fact that they know someone who is involved in activism is sort of their activism. I think, you know, there's a huge amount of people who are really, you know, tacitly in support of what I'm doing. I feel a huge amount of sort of support and love. But I think there's an awful lot of people who go, my friend's doing this thing and I support her and therefore I'm doing my bit.
Yeah. I heard something else. So, the best way to support a climate activist is to become a climate activist.
Yeah.
You know, I had Phoebe on recently, and she was telling me about her mum. So her mum like almost like disowned her when she joined Just Oil, and then just recently her mum has joined Just Oil and was doing slow marches.
No way.
Yeah. How big turnaround's that, eh?
That's amazing.
It really is. Like, at first the parents like proper dead against it. But her dad's still against it, but the mum's changed.
But that almost makes it more impressive, because to do something that is against the accepted standards of the people closest to you, it's the hardest thing. It's the hardest thing. You know, I was talking to someone recently who said that she's got a friend whose husband is a botanist, plant scientist, who is charting the decline of the plant species that he loves. He's seeing, all the graphs going in the wrong direction. And she said to him, why don't you come and get involved in some of the stuff we're doing she's a friend who's involved in Extinction Rebellion in Bristol. Why don't you come and get involved in some of the stuff XR's doing? And he said, oh, but Bridget, what would the neighbours think?
God.
And it's bad enough thinking, what will the neighbours think? And, being a bit embarrassed and ashamed to raise your head above the parapet and do something that is a bit out there. But to do that when you haven't got the support of, your partner, the people you live with, that is seriously ballsy. So all credit to Phoebe's mum. Well, all credit to Phoebe for being Phoebe. Yeah. Amazing.
There was people. There was somebody in Select Britain whose partner was like threatening to divorce them, and they were carrying on.
Yeah, I think I know who that is. I think it was someone who was at Kingsbury with us, and who was doing it absolutely against the wishes of the family. And I feel personally so lucky that it's been a big challenge for my parents and my sister and my family there, this work, and they're all on their own journey with what it how they understand it and how they can support it and how it makes them feel when I'm doing.
How does it make them feel? So when you first started doing it, so let me ask you, have you got a sister, brother?
I've got a sister,
and
and I've got my parents. Yeah, their primary concern, I think, was my safety.
Obviously, yeah.
And I've obviously said, look, I stand up in everything I do. I stand up in all this privilege. I'm a middle-aged, relatively middle-class, straight, white, cisgendered, employed, able-bodied, strong of mind woman. I am pretty much the safest person out there on the streets. I'm going to be fine. But, there's still obviously that concern that they have for my well-being. But the other thing is, I come from a family that we're a military family. My dad was in the Navy, so we grew up as a forces family, and doing what you're told is a big deal in those communities. That's
following orders,
because you have following orders. You have to conform. So the fact that I've not done what the law enforcement has told me to do, and in fact have done the absolute opposite, and have got myself in trouble legally. It's just so unbelievably outside of their experience and so stressful for them. And I think I probably haven't been very sympathetic about it, because I'm going, look, I'm holding all of this weight of responsibility and grief and fury, and I can't hold how it makes you feel as well. But it is a big deal for them. It's a big deal for our families. How have your family coped with this?
So when I went into this, I wasn't initially thinking about my family, because I'm as a single guy, no kids, no mortgage, kind of like working in construction, kind of free in a way to go into activism. So I thought, oh, what brilliant, straight in. But obviously, it was my poor mother that was the one who was suffering all the way through that, because I remember during Insulated Britain, it was outside the what's it called now, the Home Office. I got interviewed by the Sun, and then they put me on the front page, like slagging me off with the Sun newspaper during Insulated Britain, and I was getting calls off from my friends and my mum especially, pleading with me to come home. Just come home. You're gonna get thrown in prison if you carry on, And this is when we were going like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, just blocking the M25 over and over and over again. But I just had to explain to her, this is bigger than me. This is bigger than one person. And she doesn't want to hear that, because I'm a son. I'm a little boy, I'm a son. She doesn't want me to go and throw myself on the cogs of industry, But someone's got to do it, and no one's coming to save us.
Yeah.
So
that's it, isn't it? I think those of us that do this have gone, well, what's the good reason why it shouldn't be me?
Yeah.
Who else is it going to be if it's not me?
My friend Stephanie, she has a bag, and it's takes it everywhere she goes. So it's just always in the pictures on actions, and it says in bold, it says, if not you, then who? And if not now, then when? Very simple, very, clear.
Yeah.
I think the turning point for me personally was when I realised, I was like weighing it up, like, okay, prison, fines, court costs, criminal record, loss of earnings, money, fun, travelling, all the good things in life. I was like, well, if I look at it like that, then it's obvious what I should do, but the conclusion I came to was it was not about me. It's not about me. Or what's best for you.
No, I think that's right. I have a very brilliant therapist who I think is probably shared by a lot of people in the movement. But I I said this to her once, and I said, it just doesn't matter what happens to me. It doesn't matter what my life is from here on in. My life, the first 40 years of my life were extremely free. I did pretty much whatever I wanted. I had a great education. I travelled. I did all sorts. It doesn't matter if I don't do any of those things again. It doesn't matter if, you know, if I don't have a big relationship again in my life. It doesn't matter, you know, if I don't see parts of the world that I've never seen that are amazing. It just doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what happens to me. And she said, you know, just be really careful you're not getting too close to sort of language of martyrdom. And I think there's obviously a danger with that, but I do think there's this sort of, it's a little bit like that feeling that centre of the storm feeling that we were talking about when you're on an action, is just going, I understand my place in all of this now, and I understand that I've got a purpose and I've got things to do that are more important and that is more compelling to me than having really nice holidays and you know, having loads of leisure time to do the things I used to love doing. It just doesn't feel relevant in the bigger picture. I've
yet to do all my travelling and have all my holidays. Like, I was saving up through COVID to go backpacking around Southeast Asia, and then I joined XR in Little Britain, and then that's, you know. So
tells its own story.
I'm a bit salty about that, to be honest. I've decided, like, at some point I am just gonna up and go travelling around Southeast Asia. I'd like to jump on a cargo ship, ideally.
Yeah. Well, look, you know, we've all come into this movement at different points in our life, haven't we?
Yeah.
I've done a lot of brilliant, lovely things, and I'm fine with not doing any more of those. That's okay.
Yeah.
But that's not everyone's story, you know. You know, people like you, you know, people like Phoebe, who you know, these people who are, it's young people who haven't had any of those things that my generation has experienced, any of those privileges, and won't have them.
So one of those people, I'm not going to name her, but there's a young girl in the movement who's a good friend of mine, and she's just turned 20, and all of her friends are going to university, and she's like a main time mobiliser for Just Stop Oil. And she's seriously pissed off about it. Like, she's salty because she's seen all her friends going to uni and doing all these fun things and stuff, all the things you should be doing when you're 20, and she's trying to save the world. So it's
and it isn't fair, is it? It isn't fair that it should be left to those of us that simply can't sleep at night unless we're doing this.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to.
It's not fair, and it's not fair that it's people who are that young, who are giving up on all the things that so many of us have taken for granted. It's just not fair. But it's where we are, and I guess the question is, to everybody, what are you prepared to do? What are you prepared to do? Not only for your future, but it's for our present, isn't it? It's now.
You know, there's in the news I've seen quite a lot. It's mentioned a few times. We need to. These wildfires will continue until we stop, until we lower our CO2 emissions, and that's like a big lie, because we've actually passed loads of tipping points. So not only do you have to stop all your carbon emissions, you have to go on full-blown reverse mode and like replant every single rainforest in the world and go on, you know, some massive like geoengineering rewilding projects globally.
And there's a little bit of us that, as humans, our brains can't cope with that, can they? Because the reality is, what's up there, even if we stopped contributing to it tomorrow, what's it going to take? 30, 40, 50 years for that to draw down, for the cycle, like you say, for the cycle to start going in reverse, and for temperatures to well, maybe it won't even be temperatures, but it will be the concentration of carbon dioxide in the environment, in the air. It's going to take a long time for that to start coming down again. I think
so. The US military are actually looking into injecting reflective particles, like gold particles, into the high stratosphere around the Earth, and they would stay there for quite a long time before coming back down. And they're looking at reflecting a small amount of sunlight hitting Earth to like artificially cool the planet. Now I know that's just a band-aid on the problem, and we can't just keep doing that. But I'm genuinely of the opinion now that we're out of options and we need to. We seriously, like, we're out of time. Like, we're not ready to solve this problem yet. We need more time, and I think.
No, and there are no perfect solutions now. Everything's compromised. So everything we reach for is gonna have drawbacks. That's what we've baked in. But it's just fascinating, isn't it, that we're more prepared to consider seeding, reflective dust into space, and we're more prepared to consider the like science fiction of carbon capture than we are to just fucking build some more wind turbines.
It's about money.
And work out how we harness this island's wave power and to shift to solar. We're just the solutions are all there, and some of them are so straightforward, and yet we won't do them because it means giving up oil and coal and gas.
Well, I think we've pretty much given up coal, mostly, at least in the UK anyway, but it's about money. It's too much money being made. Money is power, money is influence. If you're making hundreds of billions of pounds a year, you can afford to buy a few politicians.
Yeah.
It's easy.
Well, it's no coincidence, is it? The news about quarterly profits for the oil companies comes out within 24 hours of the fact that we're licensing new oil and gas firms, and the fact that Rishi Sunak's wife's dad's company, in which of course Rishi Sunak has got shares, is making an absolute windfall from these licenses. It's just so corrupt.
Someone put it to me very simply, it's like a smash and grab. Yeah. Like they know they're screwed. They know they're gonna have to stop doing it soon. They just they're trying to make as much money as they can do now to compensate for the money they won't make in the future from not having to do oil and gas. I like what you said at the start. I mean, you said something at the start that really got me. You said this is like a war, right? This is like someone said it to me as well recently, because I thought about it. Like, we actually are in a non-violent conflict against the British government over the issue of fossil fuels and climate action. Like, the government are taking action that will endanger life on Earth and your children. Like, if the government were coming to, come and kill your children, you'd fight tooth and nail. They're just doing it in a sneaky way and distracting you all with the mainstream media bullshit that goes on. Yeah. Big Brother and football or whatever else is they're going on about. Yeah. Sorry, it's going on a bit of a rant. I need to say, I also need to say, by the way, that the views expressed on this episode are not the views of any organisation. And me and Chloe here are just expressing our own personal views.
I'm not here in my Just Stop Oil spokesperson capacity.
Exactly.
I'm just here as myself.
I just wanted to get that on record.
Yes. Yeah, very good. But yes, it's I am so grateful. I mean, it's funny because just before we started this, you said we don't know each other very well, and we don't. We met once, haven't we? And we're on. I guess we're on social media, and as so many of us are. But the truly amazing thing about having stepped into this really scary place of taking action and putting yourself on the line and getting yourself into all sorts of trouble that you would never have considered if it wasn't for the fact that the planetary breakdown is underway, and we're just trying to do everything we can to make it as least bad as we can. The compensation for all of the stress and the grief and the pressure and the fines and the restricted where you live and the fact that the government has restricted your voice, all of this stuff, the compensation for it is this amazing movement of people who have also all stepped up. And we don't all need to know each other very well to know that we all know and love each other. Yeah. And it's an amazing thing. When we met at that at the JSO social in Birmingham, I think just before Christmas maybe it was. And we were making badges, and you made me a badge, and then we just had this. Then we just had like 2 sentences of conversation that just shifted from small talk into like the really big stuff. And I was crying. I was crying straight away, and you gave me this lovely big hug, and you just go, we're all here for each other. We're all here to hold that grief, that love, to be in support for each other in a way that I have never experienced before joining this movement. It's the most profoundly beautiful thing, the spirit of people who come together to do this work in love and support for each other and for our world, and that connection that we experience with each other, I think is where hope lies.
I think it's, I love that, and I think it comes down to the fact that, like, not only am I fighting for my life and my children's futures and my children's lives, I'm fighting for your life and your children's lives, and you're fighting for me and my children. Do you know what I mean? So just by being here, you're taking a stand for each other, and you know, and everybody who takes action knows it's a very difficult decision to go to do that. It can be anyway. Like, it's, you know, and there's one moment that I absolutely love, right? And I wish I could bring my camera and microphone in when they do this, because obviously you can't. But the pre-action check-in, you know, the check-in before you go on action, and everybody just gets, like, I don't know, a minute to just go around and say what has driven them to this point, how are they feeling in the moment. And when you go around in a circle and you hear some of those reasons, like, and you hear the raw emotion behind them, like, you know, it's a mother, for example, say, I'm doing this to my children. That is the most powerful things I've ever heard in my life. And the funny thing is, you have to be an action taker to hear it, because they don't record it, and they only have those conversations right before an action, you know. And I think that talks most about that sense of, like, community, like, you know, you're all there for these very deep, powerful, like, emotional reasons and logical reasons, but everyone's in the same boat and everyone's there together. And you just can't beat that.
You can't. And I think we've got to get better at communicating that, because I think when we say to people, come and join us in activism, what they see is our anger, and they see our commitment, and they think, oh, I don't really want to be that angry, and also I don't want to give up that much of my time, and you know, it's whatever. But what we don't communicate is this joy of taking action, and of connecting with the other people that are taking action, and of being so, like, deeply comforted in all your anxiety and your grief by each other. So and the joy of it, you know, the absolute joy and love of it. And somehow we've got to get better at telling people you're going to feel all that stuff as well, and it will really be worth it.
I've got a question for you. So your time in prison, did that strengthen your resolve? Like, how did you feel about it? Did you feel like more? Well, did it strengthen your resolve?
Yes. Yeah, it did. I mean, it was similar to that moment we've talked about before. It felt very powerful being in prison, because your body is where your mind is. You know, you are absolutely in the same place with your principles.
Yeah.
So it was a sort of a more intense version of that kind of walking to an action, or being on an action, and kind of feeling that sense of rightness. I just felt like I was doing the most important work I could be doing, and I think part of my experience of being in prison, and this may not have been the same for you because your circumstances were completely different, but there were 9 of us in Foston Hall together from the Kingsbury Action. So, you know, I was in a cell with a woman who I didn't know particularly well before going on to action, but, you know, I was with someone who, like, you know, we had that same connection, you know, and there were others of us who were there as well. So I didn't feel lonely or isolated, and I have, you know, huge empathy for the time you spent where you must have had moments of feeling very lonely and isolated. But I didn't, and also it was only a week. But no, it did make me also think. It made me furious about the justice system and about, you know, the people that I met
It's a shit. It's a shit show, isn't it?
It's a shit show. Who are there because they're poor, largely. They're there because they've committed crimes of poverty, because we've got no social housing, we've got no community drug work, and we've not got enough community mental health workers, and so people just, there's nowhere else for them to go other than prison, and it's an absolute disgrace, the lack of care with which people are treated. So that made me really angry, but it also it made me go, this is not an undoable thing. I could do this again if I had to. When I have to, I can do this again.
Can I tell you about something that I did in prison to help me get through my time? So I read a book on the history of Poland, and in the 1930s, Russia had annexed large parts of Poland. I think they might have even taken it over completely. But anyway, there was Polish activists who wanted their free Poland country, free from Russian hands. And the Russian government took 20,000 Polish activists and put them in gulags in Siberia. Now, so working in a gulag in Siberia, so the conditions, it's usually around about -20 blizzards, and you are sleeping in a hut with no running water, very little food, very little clothes, your guards have got machine guns and have authority to shoot you if they feel like it, and you're digging up a rail track going into Siberia, and that's just your life for the rest of your life until you feel like dying, or you do die. Now, this kind of comes like a place of gratitude, because, I'd be sitting in my cell and I thought, what if you could go back in time and pluck one of those Polish activists that's been laying tracks in -20 for 20 years and put him in this cell here with me, with hot and cold, clean running water, a shower, a food and a bed, a TV, a kettle, a phone. He would probably burst into tears crying, to be honest, and just can you imagine the amount of gratitude he would have being in that space? So that's what I tried to feel. I tried to imagine that kind of level of gratitude for the little things,
It's all about perspective, isn't it?
Yeah.
I found learning about the suffragettes at school, but also in the context of non-violent civil disruption, for environmental reasons. I found it very, very moving. And my initial thought was always I wouldn't have been brave enough to do that. Could I have gone to prison and be force-fed? Would I have been prepared to? Suffragettes took actual violent action, didn't they?
They did.
They weren't just chucking paint a lot of the time. Would I have been brave enough to do that? And I'm eternally grateful that I don't have to fight that fight, because this one, it's asking a lot less of us than was asked of those activists in Poland.
Is it though?
And of those activists.
Is it though? I kind of feel like it's only a matter of time before there becomes a violent direct action group in the UK.
Sure. But presently I'm not being asked to put my life on the line.
No, that's true.
Bit of my reputation, bit of my earnings, maybe a bit of my liberty. But I'm not being asked to put my life on the line. And there are people who are fighting this fight in other countries in the world who are being forced to put their life on the line.
That's true. I think it's 3 climate activists a year or something like that get killed.
Yeah. So I just keep thinking it's such a small thing that's being asked of us in the grand scheme of human history, of what has been and of the human future.
I want people to realise as well, this is a numbers game. Say if we all rally up, say if it becomes the cool thing to become a climate activist and hundreds of millions of people all do it, then we'll win. We'll win. Have you not seen the chaos that Just Stop Oil has been causing with 1,000 people? Maybe less than 1,000 people? Jesus, can you imagine if we had 1 million? It'd be over in a week. It would be over. All the airports would be closed because of us, all the motorways, all the ports, the city, the country would be shut down.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, once the government concedes and says, okay, no new oil, that is when it explodes. That is when billions of people jump on because they can see, holy shit, we can actually make our government do something. And that is people power, and we have it. And we're told that we don't have it. You know, we're brought up to think that we don't have any power, we can't change the government, we can't change anything. That's not true. It's happened before.
Yeah. I think the only people who will say you can't make a difference, one person can't make a difference. The only people that say that are the people who've never tried.
Yeah, never tried to make a difference. Do you know,
You've given up. You've given up before they've even tried. Because it's absolutely possible.
I think we've already made a difference.
Yeah.
I think you can actually see it. Like, Insulate Britain, I think it actually made a difference. People talking. And now Just Stop Oil has definitely made a difference. There's groups all over the world now sitting in motorways, closing ports. Yeah. So it's grown out of this. And don't underestimate your potential to change the world. Like, I've got a friend, right? So this is brilliant. So I've got a friend called Kai. He was just a 19-year-old student. And you probably might know Kai.
I don't think I do.
And well, how do I say this without incriminating him? Basically, he's had a massive influence. Like, he came up with some ideas that propelled certain people into fame in the activism world. You know, and therefore his influence has gone on, because he's already influenced somebody else and made somebody else famous. That means that all the further influence after that is all still tied back to what he originally did. So you don't know how far, like, the ripples of your actions will go when you do these things.
Well, the power of an idea. It's just sometimes it's just the power of an idea, isn't it? And that's one person having one thought and going, "What if we did this?"
Yeah. The idea I was trying to share when I was in prison is that we have to have faith that we're going to change the world, not hope. If we're hoping that we can change the world, if you can lose hope, you know, you can become hopeless quite easily. But if you have faith, you just believe that we are going to, you don't have to know how we're going to do it. You don't have to have all the answers. But if you just believe that somehow, some way, we'll figure it out, you know, we'll find the light at the end of the tunnel. I think that's very powerful, because when you have that idea and you hold that in you, you become more creative. Like, you become braver. Like, you know, I would never have started this podcast if I didn't believe, like, the ideas would come to me, I'd figure it out along the way. If you think it's all going to be, if you just looking at it like, I can't see how it's going to come to fruition, then you won't try.
No. And I think we get caught in the idea that you've got to envisage the end result for it to even be worth starting on the journey. And I think one of the amazing things about this movement is going, we just know that we have to be on the journey. We don't know where we're going to end up, but we have to start. We can't make it perfect before we start, because we haven't got time. We've just got to start.
Yeah. I like what you said about seeing the end goal. I like to do that. In your opinion, right, what is the end goal? Like, the big end goal finale?
I don't know that there is one. I think we just have to keep going until we're safe.
Oh, I think we need to keep going well past being safe. I think we need to rewild, you know, change all of our infrastructure, change all our political systems, change our education systems, change our food systems, change our energy systems, change, you know, like, it's like, I say one big goal, but really the work is going to be enormous. It's going to be the biggest task that humanity has ever faced.
Well, it won't ever end. I mean, these individual campaigns will end, or they'll grow into something else.
I'm sure they will.
As they, you know, Just Stop Oil's grown out of learnt things from and grown out of IB, and IB learnt things from and has grown out of XR, and different ideas have come in and changed the course, and that will always happen. Mm-hmm. But I don't think there is a point where we down tools and go, yeah, we've done it. It's all good. It's all great. I think you're right. Maybe there's a point at which we're safe, and then there's a point at which we go, and now let's make everything better for everybody.
I don't think would be safe for like another 50 years. I think it'd take like 50 years of serious geoengineering. Like, one thing I always talk about, what you mentioned before, is harvesting the power of the tide, the ocean. Like the ocean rises and falls continuously. We're an island. You know, we're three quarters ocean on this planet. We could power every single coast, every single piece of land near the coast. Indefinitely, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Yeah. And wouldn't it be amazing to think that wouldn't it be incredible to think we could make those tide harnessing machines out of, waste plastic and solve the ocean plastic crisis at the same time? But, there's got to be ways of finding solutions that work for more than just one.
Do you want to hear a solution about the plastic problem, which I've heard about, which is brilliant, by the way? As always, nature comes to the rescue. So in a landfill in Southeast Asia somewhere, some scientists they found some green slime growing on this plastic, this like non-recyclable plastic, and they looked at it and they've analysed it. It turns out some bacteria have evolved the ability to break down plastic and eat it as food. Wow. So obviously they're very excited, and they've taken it into the lab and they're trying to like help it along to get even better at it, and they're looking at scaling it up massively.
Wow.
And we might be able to use microbes to eat all the plastic waste in the world.
That would be amazing. What do they give off, though? Do they give off
I don't know too much.
Methane or something?
Probably, yeah. They're breaking it down like organic matter, so they probably would produce methane, which is really what we can't afford, methane, right now. So.
Yeah. But again, it's like, that's wonderful. That's great. That's maybe that's an important part of the solution. But it's not like carbon capture. It's not a license to keep doing what we're doing.
Nothing is.
We've still got to stop doing what we're doing. We've got to stop the harm.
Yeah, let's just clarify. We need to stop all new oil and gas in the United Kingdom. It's that rocket and the world.
Yeah.
And then go on the largest green energy building campaign in human history.
Yeah. And wouldn't it be exciting? We could be on the cusp of a new enlightenment, a green enlightenment, where we could be making discoveries all the time, and they could be, affecting the way that we live for the better all the time.
See, I see that's possible, because we're at humanity's crossroads right now, and that is one potential route we could take.
Yeah.
Like, there's just got to be some big change in the way we run our planet, and we could make that happen. And
there's got to be a voice offering us that vision, and that's what's so lacking at the moment. No one is offering us any vision.
We're offering it right here, right now. This is a platform, and we are offering that voice and that idea right now. Yeah. It can happen.
Well, it's so needed.
It's so needed, but we need you to make it happen. It's down. Nobody else is going to come and save you. You have to step up. You have to step up and take action. And like you've heard today from me and Chloe, you will not regret it. You'll have a fantastic time. Well, maybe not always. It can be a little bit straining being thrown in prison. The after effects of prison are usually worse than that, going to prison themselves.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have said that.
Yeah, the tag, definitely. Drive me crazy.
Yeah, bad.
How are you feeling, by the way? Do you need a comfort break? Are you happy to carry on? Do you want to round up soon?
I think probably I should go and wrestle my children into bed. So if there's anything else you wanted to ask, let's do that, and then I should go and.
Okay. Well, I want to ask you a difficult question now. It's my favourite question to ask, but the thing is, I should have prepared you for it because it's a really big question, but. If you were given dictatorial powers over the United Kingdom, and let's say, starting next week, you were the Prime Minister, and everyone had to listen to you, what would be the first 5 or 3 things you'd change immediately?
Well, obviously, I would revoke all new licences for oil and gas.
Oh, boo! Oh, look at it. Go on.
and stop subsidising those industries. You know, the money that we send every week, we send £236 million every week of taxpayers' money to oil and gas companies in various forms of subsidy. And we're not going to do that anymore. We're not going to do that. We're going to take that money and we are going to upgrade our energy grid so that we can move energy around in response to where it's being created and where it's needed. And we're going to full scale go for it with renewables. There's no ban on onshore wind anymore, so we're going to have wind farms and we're going to love our wind farms everywhere that's suitable for them. We're going to absolutely go for it with tidal power. We're going to it's going to be mandatory for any new build home to have solar panels, to have grey water recycling, to have rainwater collection, and to have heat pumps, to have networked heat pumps. So anything you build, they're going to be green home, and they're going to be blimmin' well insulated as well. So because actually, you know, I've put solar panels on my roof recently, and you know they're at the moment they're providing 70% of my energy.
Wow.
So, you know, if every home had solar panels on it, the idea that we would need quite as much energy as we're supposedly pulling out of the North Sea would just be known for the ridiculous, preposterous bunkum that it is.
So you can have like over like roads and things like that. You can have like structures that carry solar panels to shade the roads, and use solar panels in like areas where people relax and things like that, and you can have like power generation also acting as shade.
Yeah.
Does it?
Well, you can put them in fields where you have livestock. You know, to provide shade to animals.
There was one in India where it was over. They put them over like a canal where the water was coming down.
Oh yeah.
They covered the canal with the solar panels because they were losing less water through evaporation and turning that power into electricity at the same time. So it's about being smart with it, really.
Yeah, there's so much innovation out there, isn't there? So I guess that would be one. It'd be obviously no more licenses. We'd be looking at how we build our homes, and we'd be doing all the things we've been calling for. You know, the insulation of houses, as well as retrofitting, as well as building new better, and then profit. I think we have to get rid of the idea of profit being a thing. Profit needs to become immoral.
Yeah, that's right.
It needs to be immoral to make a profit. So that means we're not looking for businesses to be successful, but they just need to meet their needs. And then anything that's surplus, once people have been paid properly, needs to go back into, back into business growth or back into the community. So taxing people properly, getting rid of the idea that businesses can have as their sole purpose making profit. Okay, well that's been brilliant. It's been great having you on. Have you enjoyed being on today? Oh, it's been lovely, and you're a brilliant interviewer.
Oh, thank you. It means a lot. It's good to know.
Really good, insightful, empathetic questions. And it's been lovely to just spend some time with you, actually.
Oh, thank you very much. We have listeners all over the world, by the way, right now. So is there anything you want to say to them before we go?
Join us at juststopoil.org. You won't regret it.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening.
Make sure you share with your friends and family and subscribe, because we're only a very small channel. And as you can tell, it's a very important issue. So please help us out. Share us on your social medias. And make sure you subscribed. And thank you very much.
We are the tongue that speaks the truth. We are the song upon the wind. We are the courage to stand forth. We are the change that now begins. On this good green earth, we will take a stand with an open heart and a healing hand. With an open heart and a healing hand.